Gonna be a very interesting for sure matchup. We have on screen Yuma Miyamoto's team. First, let's talk a little bit about his accomplishments. He got top 64 Worlds in 2024 season, also top 64 at Japan Nationals in the same season, top 64 in 2023. So in that regard, like pretty consistent player. And top 16 at Japan Nationals 2023. And Juma is using a team that has the Dragonite Goldengo or Saluna combination, the DUG combination with Alolan Ninetales. This one has Icicle Spear from what I noticed here. So it's a move that is there to hit your own and either most likely to activate those Rage Fist stacks. Rillaboom with the Miracle Seed. Assault's Ursaluna is a really consistent Pokemon that you typically see in these compositions. The standard Skill Shot, Tailwind, Haze, Dragonite with loaded dice, and Terra Fairy, and a Life Orb offensive Goldango. We also see that the Ninetales, besides the Icicle Spear that I mentioned, has Aurora Veil and Icy Wind support for its team, and it's a bulk up safety goggles Annihilate.
Yeah, so some really interesting and innovative little adjustments to a lot of sort of standard Pokemon that we've been seeing. I think it's one of the perfect teams for a really powerful player to pick going into a big tournament. You've got a lot of really good options that are more standard and a lot of really good variations that are super, super useful, especially if you're facing something off the wall from the other player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're gonna get now into the other players' team sheet. Daravone from Canada, a little bit of their accomplishments as well. 2024 season, top 32 at Vancouver Regionals. Toronto Regional, also top 32 in the same 24 season. Top 8 at the World Championship in 2016 in the Seniors Division. And the finalist at the Canada National in 2012 on the Juniors Division. So it's a player that has probably been playing for a while. 2012 is, even though it was a junior back then, he's been playing for almost 12 years at least. So it's a really, really experienced player, most likely. And he's using a very similar team, actually. We have a mirror on the Dragonite Ninetales and the Ursaluna part. However, the sets are slightly different. Instead of being an Assault-based Ursaluna, this one is a Life for one with Protect, Terra Normal. The Ninetales, we do have a Ninetales also here, so it's a Ninetales mirror, but this one does not have the Icicle Spear nor the Light Clay. It's actually a Cover Cloak variant with Anchor Icy Wind, but also has the Aurora Veil. The Dragonite does not have Haze. He decided to not lock that move. Haze is usually a standard move on Dragonite because usually in a tournament you want to have that for something like Dondozo, right? But if you are not expecting Dondozo in a match like this, you probably can just give out that move, and instead the Dragonite has opted for a Stomping Tantrum instead with the classic Skill Shot, Tailwind, Loaded Ice, Terra Fairy. There's a Sneasler and Didi also on this team. The Sneasler with the Psychic Seed item to get that Unburden immediately, special defense boost as well. 3 attacks protect, with Throw Chop being the move of coverage, usually Terra Dark as well. Standard Incineroar with safety goggles, Fake Out Knockoff Flare with Spark Shot, and a male Indeedee with the Expanding Force option on the Psychic Terrain that it also sets up with Focus Sash and Protect Trick Room. Not opting for something like Imprison, Protect, Helping Hand has been a really, really common combination of move lately for a lot of Indeedee Sneasler teams. So really standard, really, really consistent with the Terra Psychic option as well, just increase the power on those expanding forces when needed.
Yeah, I think that Indeedee is going to be really important in this match if it's able to play well against the Rillaboom. I think it's really nice to have a Pokemon immune to that Rage Fist without being weak to Drain Punch from Annihilate, especially with how many ways that Yuma has to be able to boost that Rage Fist power. Of course, the big question is whether you can get that Psychic Terrain up when you're facing a Rillaboom, but I think Daravone really has a lot of options to bring into this game. And I think it's going to be interesting to see if he's able to make use of those and show us why he's the MVP of the tournament. And I guess we'll see right now as we jump into this game.
Yeah, there is a Bloodmoon Ursaluna 19th lead right off the bat. I believe this is from, I think, Yura side. And we see this is from Daravone side. And we see a Ninetales also here. No, I believe it's Dragonite Goldengo on Yuma side. So we have the option, obviously, to see immediately the Tailwind option. Dragonite is weak to ice, 4 times weak actually, but because of the multi-scale, you can take the risk and just say like, okay, I'm not gonna die from this attack. I can just Tailwind immediately go for a Make Rain because the opposing Ninetales does not have a Focus Sash, so the Make Rain would immediately get the KO on that slot. You can also Terra if you want immediately, right? But I believe we are seeing a Terastallization. I think this is not on the Dragonite, it's actually on the Ursaluna from Daravone's side, getting that Terra normal. It is actually a more offensive Life Orb variant. The Ninetales does have the option to go for Icy Wind, and I believe that's what we're seeing. Icy Wind immediately, probably depending on how this Ursaluna is trained, is going to be able to outspeed both Pokemon, and that's going to be huge for Daravone's if that Ursaluna is actually faster. As we do see, it is faster, and that is a Blood Moon Terra normal into the Dragonite, getting the immediate one-hit KO after the Icy Wind chip.
Yeah, so that Dragonite thinking it was safe with that multi-scale, but very much not. That's one of the really cool things that especially a Covert Cloak Ninetales can go for, being able to just set up an immediate KO with that Ursaluna. But that Goldengo being incredibly brave, not worrying about that Earth Power, or at least saying, well, if you knock out that Dragonite, I'll get a KO in return, and finishing off that Ninetales completely, and bringing that Ursaluna super low.
Yeah, that was a really interesting approach from Yuma. Like saying, as you said, you cannot KO both. So you either attack the Dragonite or you attack the Goldengo. So I'm going to get something off here. And even though you did lose your Dragonite, you did lose your Tailwind Setter, Goldengo got a KO on the Ninetales immediately, and that Ursaluna is probably in range of its own Life Orb, or it's going to be close actually. Maybe it has 2 turns of Life Orb, but it's low enough for your own Rillaboom to pick up the KO with Grassy Glide, for example, if you want. But obviously you have to respect the potential Indeedee switching to block that Grassy Glide. But we do see Sneasler being revealed here. That probably indicates that Indeedee is in the back, because you want to obviously get that immediate boost on its speed and on its special defense. And because your opponent has Rillaboom, you also want to have terrain control sometimes, I imagine. So very interesting Pokemon to bring here. Remember that the Goldengo is not safe in front of this Sneasler, since this Sneasler does have Throw Chop. And because of the speed drop, you can actually just pick up the KO with Earth Power. So we're going to see a Terastallization on Yuma's side. I believe this is the Ursaluna. Yeah, it is a Assault-based Ursaluna with Terra Ghost. So, of course, that is a very nice defensive Terra to have against Sneasler, since you are immune to Ghost Combat and you resist Dark Claw. And we see a Bakun Wave priority move. That's one of the things that Assault-based Ursaluna has, right? It has the access to that extra move, since you are not able to have to protect. The Assault Vest allowing it also to hit better on the special side, and that extra move is huge here. Throw Chop not doing enough damage, and I believe this is going to be a clean KO on Goldengo's side. With a critical hit, remember Goldengo was -1. I don't know if that matters. It's a single target Life Orb. Sneasler didn't have the special defense boost, but this is looking really good for Yuma.
Yeah, that's definitely, not definitely, but almost certainly going to seal the game for Yuma for this game 1. Interested to know if that mattered for the Sneasler. That could have been really important. One other crucial fact, Daravone realizing that that was actually quite the read from Yuma. Going for the Terra Ghost and the Vacuum Wave was a great way to cover that fake out, being able to cause a flinch and making sure that the Ursaluna goes down before taking out Goldengo. But there was this option of switching in the Indeedee to block the Vacuum Wave. So Daravone still has a lot of options, even if the first few turns play out exactly the same. I think both players are aware of that, and we'll need to think about that going forwards.
Yeah, as you mentioned, like Indeedee could have switched in there. The Goldengo on Yuma's side was -1 speed because of the Icy Wind, so you could have easily just bait that Sneasler was going to attack and just like switch it out immediately into Indeedee, get that Psychic Terrain control to block that Bakun Wave. But similarly, because Goldengo's speed was reduced, Yuma could have also switched out into Rillaboom to cover for that. So it was kind of like a mind game there, but it worked out for Yuma because Daravone didn't actually bring this Indeedee, and as we expected, it was Indeedee in the back. Now Rillaboom is here, and there's not much that Daravone can do from here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the game really felt like it was sealed as soon as that Goldengo got to start getting all of those Make It Rains off. It was really brave for it to go for the Make It Rain. That Earth Power could have finished it off, but with that like turn 1 read, Yuma just really crushed things in terms of momentum. That was just so far down for Daravone to go just from turn 1.
Yeah, as you said, Goldengo was super brave, right? Like it was in front of a Ursaluna with Life Orb, and he just attacked. And then the upcoming turn, he just attacked again and got another KO. Of course, the Ursaluna was able to attack that Goldengo as long as the Indeedee switched in to block the Bakun Wave, right? So it was a mind game at the end of the day, but Goldango just got 2 KOs. I don't know if the crit matter because at the end of the day, it is still a life for a single target, but the special attack was dropped from the previous Maker Rain, so probably could have mattered. So we have to see, obviously, if that happens again or a similar scenario happens again in next turn. But yeah, this Goldango just getting a lot of KOs. The Ursaluna just cleaning also in the end game, and the Dragonite going down turn 1 is something that probably you have to respect a little bit more from Yuma's side, right? Like, even though you won, if let's say a couple of things happen differently and the Ndidi switching maybe to block that Bakun wave, for example, the game could have been different. So I do think that even though you won, you still have to maybe consider, okay, how your opponent is approaching the game, the tendencies you saw in that game 1, to maybe consider what kind of adaptation you want to have for game 2.
Yeah, absolutely. That we've seen just the huge amount of offensive pressure from Canada's side here, and that's going to be something that Yuma has to keep into account, even though we've seen that the Goldango can do just as much back. So we're going to see a lead adjustment from Daravone. That's going to be the Incineroar and Dragonite, just a complete change from what we saw before, but the same lead from Yuma's side. It worked last time, no reason to fix it immediately.
Yeah, there's no Ninetales this time around, so there's no Icy Wind pressure immediately, but obviously Incineroar is really good into Goldango. Goldango doesn't have anything to touch it. You could technically just go for a Flare Blitz immediately, and depending how this Goldango is trained, it might not survive that Flare Blitz immediately, and the opposing side doesn't have a Intimidate user, so you cannot necessarily bring your own Incineroar, for example. But Daravone actually being a little bit, let's say, more aggressive, because the Annihilate could have been led in, you would have given the Defiant boost, but Incineroar was switching, and there's a Terra immediately from Dragonite here going into the Terra. Both Dragonites obviously don't want to face each other with Scale Shot available.
Yeah, so definitely respecting that Scale Shot risk and going for Make It Rain, maybe to cover the other Dragonite's potential for going for that Fairy Terrestrialization. We're going to see Incineroar not going for that Fake Out, maybe setting up to try to do some damage to Goldango, as Dragonite and Daravone's side goes for the Tailwind, setting up this Incineroar to move next, going for that knockoff, but not finishing off that Goldango, so it still has a chance to do a little more damage, although it doesn't have that Life Orb anymore, which is crucial. But Yuma going for the Scale Shot, even with the risk of that Fairy Terrestrialization, and that's gonna finish off that Dragonite. Very fortunate for that Dragonite that it outsped and was able to get that Tailwind up first, otherwise Daravone would have been back against the wall right from the start.
Yeah, and Incineroar on Daravone's side, they didn't actually cover for that option going for a Fake Out, for example, because this Dragonite is obviously multi-scale, so it's not inner focus. You have the option to click Fake Out if you want to be safe. But I don't know if that was a speed tie between both Dragonites, because if that was a speed tie and your Dragonite lost a speed tie, you would have gotten nothing from that Dragonite, right? Because the Tailwind wouldn't have been able to be set up. This Goldango outsped the Dragonite also, so that is an indicator that this Goldango is probably just like max speed, timid maybe. But maybe if Daravone is, let's say, was confident enough to make that play, that probably means he's using a Jolly Dragonite, maybe. I don't know. But the truth here is that he at least got the Tailwind off before going down, and now we see his Sneasler as a switch in.
Yeah, that Sneasler is really well positioned now that the Goldango is down to very low hit points, and the Dragonite being at -1 defense probably helps it a little bit too. It's got some Fake Out pressure, so it could try to slow down this Dragonite and maybe set up for slowly preventing the Tailwind. It might not have a ton of time since that Goldango is still sitting on the field, but it's got quite a bit of damage it can throw out now as Goldango goes for a Protect, respecting the potential of being KO'd.
Yeah, and his Sneasler goes for the Dark Claw. It's super effective. It's -1 defense, no status condition. The Flare Blades doubled into that Dragonite, predicting probably the Goldango would try to protect itself from any attack here, or just saying like, you know what, your Goldango is now at -1. You're not gonna KO my Sneasler at -1, even if you get a crit. Maybe this time because it's a spread move, but maybe he said like, oh, maybe you don't get another crit in a similar scenario, so I'm just gonna risk it. Last time you got it, but I don't think you're gonna get it this time. You probably just play safe and try to protect, and if you attack, you're gonna KO yourself with your own life or recall anyway. So a double up into the Dragonite, knowing that that slot was probably unlikely to protect. He wanted to maybe get that Tailwind off because it didn't Tailwind the previous turn for a Scale Shot. And unfortunately for Yuma, Dragonite didn't survive, of course. And now we see Ursaluna Blood Moon being brought here. This Ursaluna is actually an Assault Beast variant, but it cannot Terastallize anymore out of the normal type because Dragonite decided to Terastallize, so it's not able to protect even. So it's actually just baiting it to switch out immediately into what I believe is a Rillaboom.
Yeah, so just putting out some pressure, which makes a lot of sense. Ursaluna threatened a lot of damage, and if you can maybe draw focus away from this Goldango, it might be able to show us something. But I think Daravone's been being pretty clever here. So Close Combat goes in, would have taken out that Ursaluna, does a bunch of damage to that Rillaboom instead. And we're going to see that Incineroar following up, going to just finish off that Goldango. So that switch would have been really cool if it had been able to bait anything, but with the current situation, it's sort of just, I suppose it was the only way Yuma had to ensure having both of these Pokemon on this next turn, since there was no way to protect the Ursaluna. I don't know, things are getting pretty dire for Yuma pretty quickly.
Yeah, really nice play for Daravone because, as I said, the Ursaluna doesn't have any option to protect as it's holding the Assault Bit. So you can just Close Combat. There is no Terastallization anymore because the Dragonite committed into it earlier. So having that Close Combat there would have probably KO'd. Some Ursalunas might survive that. But at that point, you still have one Pokemon in the bag. You just cover your basics there, going for a Flare Blitz into the Goldango slot in case you switch that out into maybe an Ursaluna. So yeah, really, really nice turn for Daravone as he's just going for a Protect here, trying to probably just get that last KO with Incineroar before going down, or just a knockoff into the Assault Beast Ursaluna Bloodmoon.
Yeah, so a nice knockoff from that Incineroar. We're going to have to see how heavily it's punished. It looks like some attacks are going into this Protect here, though, from the Sneasler. So, but that Earth Power very crucially finishing off that Incineroar. So I think actually Yuma was in a really horrible spot this past turn, but actually managed to find the only route where both Rillaboom and Ursaluna would be around at this turn. I think if he'd done anything else last turn, that would have been really difficult, and is going to be able to finish off this Incineroar as Tailwind turns are really dwindling. I think this might be the last turn here. So doing really everything he can to sort of set things up.
And I thought the last one was going to be Indeedee, so I was like, okay, you just bring Indeedee and you click Expanding Force, Close Combat, and you win. But it's not Indeedee. Actually, Daravone decided to not bring the Indeedee this time around, so there's no Expanding Force option, and it's going to come down to how fast the Ursaluna is trained here. But actually, I don't know if there's still one more turn of Tailwind or not, but I believe Yuma is just decided to go for a forfeit here, not wanting to maybe play it out, because at the end of the day, this Sneasler is exerting too much pressure into both Pokemon. Remember, Sneasler has Direct Claw for Rillaboom, has Close Combat for Ursaluna, but maybe he didn't want to reveal which Ursaluna was faster. He didn't want to reveal like any information on that scenario. But yeah, it's a tie here. We are going to go into a game 3. So really, really nice play in this game 2 from Daravone's, just getting that pressure immediately, getting that, like, probably he realized that, let's say the Ninetales, even though it got the icy win on game 1, probably didn't provide that much value anymore. So decided to change that a little bit, and getting that Tailwind with Dragonite proved to be a really, really consistent way of having that speed control for later.
Yeah, there were a couple of really technical turns there that I'd love to cover super quickly before we jump into game 3. I love the way that Daravone was identifying that the Goldango didn't have to go down immediately, even though it was such a threat. Like, taking that Goldango down low, removing its Life Orb, giving it the special attack drop, was enough where Daravone could just sort of single down the other slot, to the point where the Sneasler was just in a perfect position to finish things up. But then Yuma, I feel like, did really everything he could from that point. Like the really weird turn with the Ursaluna coming in to just switch out. I think literally any other way you play it, like if you send out the Rillaboom first, it's going to go down from something quite easily. And so I think that it was the only way to set up like fake out pressure plus Ursaluna afterwards. So I really liked that Yuma, even in a really tough spot, was really thinking through all of his options. And so I just wanted to call out those two turns because I think they really speak to the caliber of these two players. And I couldn't be happier that we're getting a game 3 with them going in very shortly.
Yeah, I think it is always nice to have a game 3 from our perspective, right? Like, to have that extra hype that the game 3 means, especially in this stage. Like, if Japan wins, it's over for Canada. So they really want to have that option to get the comeback. And currently this set is tied, as we do see both Dragonites again facing each other, and for the first time we see a full mirror in turn 1. Both players decided to lead with their Dragonite and Ursaluna Bloodmoon combinations.
Yeah, two just incredibly powerful Pokemon, both which have like pretty good options into each other. I think that having the Assault Vest is kind of nice for Pablo's side to be able to have that vacuum wave to threaten and do a little more damage into the other Ursaluna to be able to potentially survive the Blood Moon. So a few additional options, but because we've seen Daravone's Dragonite at least win the speed tire or maybe even be faster, it feels like Daravone has a lot of options here to set up Tailwind and go for something like a Blood Moon.
Yeah, and especially like if you're using a Lifer Ursaluna in this team, you have Tailwind and Icy Wind, there's a high chance your Ursaluna is a speedy, right? Like you probably have like max speed Modest or max speed Timid, and the opposing Ursaluna is a Solbest, so there is a chance that you just outspeed. So the question here is, are these two Dragonites speed tied? And this time, we don't see a Terra on Yuma's side, we see a Terra on Daravone's side, and a Protect just trying to play safe because they're like, you know what, I'm guaranteed to get the Tailwind if I make this play. But instead of going for a Tailwind, he just wanted to attack first because these Dragonites actually, you know, have a weird matchup into each other because Scale Shot wouldn't do any damage if the opposing Dragonite terrestrializes. But Yuma's Dragonite does not have any move to hit the opposing Dragonite because this is just a classic Tailwind Haze. I think Daravone's Dragonite does have Stomping Tantrum to at least do something if the opposing Dragonite goes for a Terra Fairy. But the Scale Shot doing a lot of damage to that Ursaluna, even though it's neutral, it did around 45%. So that's huge damage for Daravone's Dragonite.
I think Daravone's sort of perfectly positioned for this next turn, being able to have that speed boost on the Dragonite, so it's definitely going to be faster than the other one. Like, I think that went spectacularly for Daravone. And also with all that chip damage, now that Ursaluna is probably in range of a Blood Moon on Yuma's side of the field. We're going to see Yuma go for that terrestrialization. You really don't want to lose your Dragonite here, and it'll be pretty impressive if he manages to catch that Daravone going for a Scale Shot into the other slot. Although we are going to see that Tailwind. So just ensuring that this Blood Moon or whatever attack this Ursaluna wants to go for is going to get off. And yep, that's going to be a Blood Moon, following up with the Scale Shot, just really, really exploiting the fact that even though this Ursaluna is maybe a bit bulkier, it also couldn't have protected last turn. So setting up that Scale Shot into the Blood Moon, and now having Tailwind. Sure, the Tailwinds are matched, but Daravone's up an entire Pokemon here, and that's a really good place to be going forwards.
Yeah, the Ursaluna just played safe, taking advantage of the fact that because it's a Life Force set, it can't protect at that turn 1. So it went for a Protect to just be safe from any attack and then get the one, like the KO on the opposing Ursaluna. So a really good turn 1 and turn 2 play for Daravone's, as we do see Goldango coming in here, and I think Yuma is like trying to check the speed tiers here just to make sure that his Goldango is faster than potentially a turbo timid Ursaluna, which I believe hits 114 speed. So Goldango should be faster if you have more than that, so you can always just go for a safe make it rain there. But instead of going for an offensive move, Goldango decided to protect first. Maybe he wants to get some damage on the Ursaluna to put in range of Make It Rain guaranteed, but Daravone's covering for that, just going for a Protect on his own Ursaluna as the Scale Shot goes into the Goldango that just protected.
Yep, and then we're going to see another Scale Shot go into the other Pokemon that protected. So I think that actually works out pretty well in Yuma's favor here. Being able to burn the turn where the Ursaluna had the Protect. I think that there's a bit of pressure if Yuma's Goldango is indeed faster than that Ursaluna, which we believe is the case. That gives the Scale Shot plus Make It Rain option into that Ursaluna, which I believe will finish that off. And then also might even finish off the Dragonite because of that Fairy Terrestrialization and the fact that the Dragonite's multi-scale is broken. So Yuma has some options here to do a lot of damage to make up for the Pokemon deficit that he had earlier.
Yeah, I think here at this point, you just go for a Make It Rain. There is nothing you really can do. I don't think you have necessarily any reason to click Nasty Blood or something else. Just go for Make It Rain because that would KO the other Dragonite because it's Terra Fairy. And Daravone's obviously understands that and just goes for a Protect. So the Make It Rain is probably not going to be enough to KO the Ursaluna, but the Scale Shot plus Make It Rain might do the job. The Goldango is, I think, faster than its own Dragonite, if I'm not mistaken. So this means that's good information, right, to have for later. But obviously at this point there was not much Daravone's could have done in that situation other than maybe hope the Dragonite misses a Scale Shot and you get something off. But Dragonite now is going to get the speed boost, is going to outspeed some Goldango, which can come into play later if you still have your Dragonite around, if you want to set up a second Tailwind, for example. But this is a free opportunity, of course, for Daravone to bring his, for example, Sneeze Slayer. And if you bring your Sneezer, you're going to pressure that Dragonite, even though it is currently with the multi-scale active. I believe Daravone's Dragonite does have the option to use the Stomping Tantrum to break that. But no, Sneasler is going to have to probably wait a little bit. There is an Indeedee this time around, so Daravone decided to bring the Indeedee this time around, so you can go for Expanding Force. But I don't think Indeedee has enough raw power to KO Goldengo. There is the option, obviously, for Stomping Tantrum from Daravone's Dragonite into that Goldengo, because that's something that usually most Dragonites don't have, but this Dragonite in particular does have an option to attack into that Goldengo slot.
Yeah, having that Stomping Tantrum actually must have been why Yuma was protecting earlier. That's a good thing to call out, because there was actually a lot of damage potential here. Goldengo going to protect against that same Stomping Tantrum option. Going to let this last turn of Tailwind pass without needing to go for an attack, and does seem to catch that Stomping Tantrum into that slot. We're going to have to see what the other Dragonite does. It's going to go for a Scale Shot, which is probably going to just finish off this Indeedee entirely. Yeah, it's guaranteed to, as it finishes off with this third and fourth hit. Doesn't even need the fifth one. For Indeedee male, not particularly defensive. And that's really showing, I think, just that Daravone is struggling to have the right Pokemon into this last little bit of the matchup. This Dragonite having +2 speed now, having the multi-scale still intact, is in a really good position. I don't know if -2 defense puts it at the point where the Sneasler, after its Unburden boost, can finish it off with a Dire Claw. That's maybe the one thing that Yuma still would have to worry about. But mostly, this Goldengo has just done a wonderful job of doing damage and drawing a lot of attention, while the Dragonite's also been able to do a lot of damage.
Yeah, I think bringing the Indeedee in the previous turn was a little bit weird, because like Indeedee was outsped by the Dragonite, and Indeedee is usually going down from a Scale Shot, so it didn't provide much on the board. So I was really curious to understand like why the Indeedee was brought. Maybe Daravone just wanted to guarantee that Sneasler that would come after would always get the maybe the Psychic Seed activated. But I think bringing this Sneasler a little bit earlier would have maybe exerted a little bit more psychological pressure, because you can double into the Dragonite with something like Dire Claw and Stomping Tantrum, or just attack the Goldengo. We do see the Dire Claw, and it's not enough. It's not enough to KO the Dragonite. If Dragonite connects the Scale Shot, though, this should be game over. There's a Stomping Tantrum is not enough, and I believe this is just gonna come down to whether or not the Dragonite connects the Scale Shot on the Sneasler. Goldengo moving first, getting that Making Rain, getting that KO on the Dragonite. But I think the Dragonite actually should have moved before the Goldengo, right? So maybe it did miss the Scale Shot. Yeah, probably it did, because the Goldengo was lower. But now this Sneasler technically can still pull this off, because if you miss, like, you can protect the Dragonite and play the mind game. Like, Dragonite probably is a bigger threat here. So yeah, you didn't protect, but if Dragonite misses another Scale Shot, I think you can still win. But it's gonna come down to whether or not this Dragonite wants to connect the Scale Shot this time around. And there is a Scale Shot, so that is, unfortunately for Daravone, the end of the Sneasler and the end of the set. And unfortunately for Canada, this means that Canada is eliminated from the World Cup.